Hi there, this is Patricia from patriciafenty.com, and today I'm going to show you how to make these really fun and pretty Tyvek beads. It's a type of plastic that you can paint and then melt and make them into the shape of these fun beads. And you can make them in any size you like, any length, any sort of plumpness that you like. You can use different color paints, whatever you like. And you can use these for so many different projects, anything that you would use beads for. So the supplies that you'll need for this project are some Tyvek paper. Now, Tyvek is used in construction. It's actually the vapor barrier that goes between the exterior plywood and the siding of a building. So you can find this on a construction site. If you happen to have something going on nearby, you can pop in and ask for a piece of the Tyvek paper. And if not, it is available in craft stores as well. And this is nice because it has the lines on it for cutting. So you'll need some of that, and then you'll need some paints, and I think the metallic paints work really well, but you can use regular acrylic paint, liquid acrylic. It might not be quite as punchy. So I have the Deco Art in Festive Red, Purple Pearl, Bright Copper, and Peacock Pearl. Then you'll need some white craft glue, some wooden skewers. You can use metal as well, anything that is narrow enough to wrap the paper around. And then you'll need some paint application tools to paint the paper with. And you can really use anything you like. Foam brush. Here, this is a toothbrush to make little spackles. I used this with the copper paint. That's why it looks kind of brown and icky. And that works well. You can use a sea sponge, paint brushes, your fingers, anything you like. You'll need some scissors, some clothespins, and then you'll need either a heat gun or a hair dryer. And if you use a hair dryer, it needs to be at least 1500 watts. All right, so the first step is you want to paint the Tyvek paper. So you want to cut a piece to really any size that you like. The only rule of thumb with this is that the wider the bead is, the longer you want your strip of paper to be. So this strip here was 8 inches in length, and then over here this is 7 inches in length. So I'll be making these beads a little bit narrower. And then, of course, you can make them more chunky, in which case they would be narrow and longer, or you can make them wider beads, so you'd need a longer piece of Tyvek for that. So it really depends. So you can totally play around with this. Now, I'm not going to show you how to paint the Tyvek. That's pretty basic. You just want to paint it any way you like. But what you want to do is put the base coat on first. So I did a base coat of teal and let it dry. And then I did the purple and red and I let that dry. And then I did the copper on top of that and let that dry. The paint will lift off once it starts to tack up a bit. So let it dry really well in between each coat. And then let it dry well before you work with it. So this is one of the end pieces I had, so it's a bit wonky. So once you have it painted and dried, oh, and by the way, you paint on the white side, not the printed side. And you'll see there's a difference in texture as well. So all you do is you cut the strips in the shape of triangles and leaving a little tip on the one end, and you just cut them into triangle strips. And again, there's no rule of thumb here. You can make them any size you like. And so I'll just speed this up here. And you could also paint in stripes or in crisscross, like a plaid type look, whatever you like. And there's a little strip left here. I'm going to do something special with that. So, and again, these can be any size you want. And if you want to make them the same size, just mark them and measure them and make them all the exact same size. I'm just doing them randomly. So the next step is to take your skewers and a clothespin and take the widest end of your strip and start to roll it onto the skewer. And you want to roll this fairly tight because it will uncoil a little bit as you work with it. And try to keep the roll even on each side, so the taper is even on each side. And here it's off a little bit, so I just adjusted that. And just keep rolling it along and keeping it nice and snug. And then there we go. And then you want to hold this with a bit of a death grip, really, because it's easy for it to uncoil. And then you take your white glue, just a little dab of white glue. You don't need very much, just a little bit. I left the top open here, so it kind of started to dry up a bit, but there you go. And just glue that down. And then you take your clothespin, and using that round piece there, you clip that on to the bead to hold it in place so that the glue can dry. And then what you can do is you can roll the peg in the direction that you were folding it, so that the glued part is inside the peg there, so that sort of the round part of the wood is on the glued side. You can't really see it here, but right in there. And then it's got a nice firm grip. And then you just want to let that dry for a few minutes. Now while these are drying, I'll show you what you can do with little end pieces that maybe you don't want to make into small beads that might be too small to use. You can also wrap Tyvek around paper clips or safety pins and make little charms out of them. So this is my little end piece here. So I'm going to just taper it a bit more because it had that straight edge. So I'm just making it into a triangle shape, and to give it that nice shape. And then in this, we'll fit the small paper clip nicely. And then in this case, you want to put glue on the starting end. And just a little dab of glue on the wide end. And then put that into the middle of the paper clip, so the glue is sort of in the middle there. It's a little bit hard to see because it's white. And then just start it and then just pinch it together in the middle of the clip there to give it a bit of a hold. And then you just start to wrap that in the same way, just sort of pinching it flat as you go. So now I can see that this is actually too long and too thick for this, so I'm just going to taper the tail. I have really dull scissors here. So there you go. And then again, you just put a little dab of glue at the end here. And then you can get a little clip to hold that closed. So there you go. Okay, so I have a few here that have been drying for a few minutes, and I just put a little paper clip on top of this paper clip to let that dry. And then you're going to want to take the clothes pegs off once it's dried, and you'll see a little later what happened to one of mine when I went for a snack. So just leave the clothespins on for a few minutes, and then you're going to take your hair dryer on the highest setting that you have, and then for the heat gun you'd use medium or low. I don't have a heat gun, so you'd have to play with that yourself, but you want it hot enough that it'll melt the plastic, but not too hot that it burns it. So just start by going back and forth here. Now I just realized here that my plastic background was getting hot, so I've just put a tea towel down, And I've sped this up, but I'm actually moving quite slowly with the hair dryer. And then the edges are starting to curl. And then if you go from the sides, the edges will kind of curl towards the center and create a little bit more interesting texture. So you can just play around with this and work at it as much or as little as you like. And you can see here how the paper's sort of pushing towards the center. And each bead will be different because it just depends on how it dries. And work at it as much as you like, getting as much curl and texture as you like. Here, there you can see that a little bit better. And then you want to make sure that it's cooled down enough to touch because it will be quite hot. So once it's cool enough to touch, then you can start to pull it off the skewer. And it comes off really easy. And there you go. And if your ends are a little bit uneven, let the bead dry really well and take some sharp scissors, and then you can just snip the ends once it's dried or cooled down well. And that's it. It's that simple. So here they are all done, just from that little piece of paper that I had there. And so here, this is the one. I left it in the clothespin, and then I went for a little snack, and I left it too long. And when I took the clothespin off, it pulled the paint off the paper. So just use the clothespin for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, just so that the glue sets and take the clothespins off. But I'll just go back and touch that up with a little bit of paint, and it'll be no problem at all. And then on this little charm here, this was interesting. I think I was holding this with some tweezers because you wouldn't be able to hold this while you're using the heat gun. So you need something to hold it with. And so I was doing this, and interestingly, it reached a flash point very quickly. Just all of a sudden, it just melted. And I think it was because of the metal, because the metal was heating from the inside and from the outside. So be mindful of that. But if that hadn't happened, that would have been a really cute little charm. So you can use these for all sorts of embellishments. And so you can see the different sizes. This would be a nice long one that you could use for a pendant. You could wrap with some more wire and beads and embellish a little bit more. And then, of course, you could do shorter beads and link them together in a necklace. And so you can do all kinds of lovely things with these beads. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to do another tutorial where I'll embellish these a little bit further using copper wire and some beads and a bit of yarn. And then I'll put it onto a piece of copper wire and make loops so that you can use it in a project. So make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on that tutorial. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please give it a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.